Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little stickier. A time of beauty ritual so foul, so gloriously rancid, you'll wonder how anyone made it through the day without accidentally poisoning themselves. We're diving into the ancient world of skincare, self-care, and truly disturbing ideas about hygiene. So before we soak ourselves in olive oil and regret, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of historical suffering, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fun seeing who's falling asleep to the soothing horror of ancient cosmetic mistakes. Now dim the lights, maybe get comfortable, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in ancient Egypt. The good news, beauty is highly valued here. The bad news, so is slathering your face in substances that would make a modern dermatologist sprint into the Nile. You're lying on a stone bench inside a dim, incense-choked chamber. The air is thick with heat and a scent that's hard to place, somewhere between a butcher's shop and a candle store run by very sweaty ghosts. Your skin is sticky. That's because it's been coated in a fresh layer of melted goose fat, mixed with pulverized minerals, fermented milk, and something gritty that crunches when you smile. Probably powdered alabaster, or sand. Or powdered alabaster that is sand. It's hard to tell. There's a clay dish nearby filled with eyeliner paste. It's made from galena, a lead-based mineral that gives your eyes that signature kohl-lined look. It also gives you a slow, heavy metal poisoning over the years. But hey, fashion is pain. Especially when your beauty regimen is slowly attacking your nervous system one stylish flick at a time. You try not to move too much, not because you're feeling graceful, but because any sudden motion might attract flies to the sour milk mixture dripping from your neck folds. This is a facial, the kind that promises eternal youth, if you survive the scent and don't choke on a floating beetle. Ancient Egyptians believed that smooth, radiant skin was a sign of divine favour. So they went all in. Beauty wasn't a luxury, it was a full-time job. Men, women, even children wore makeup, body oils, scented waxes, and elaborate wigs. Wigs, mind you, that were often made from real human hair, beeswax, and animal fat. They smelled like commitment, and sometimes mild decomposition. You sit up, carefully, and admire your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. Your lips are stained a deep red, thanks to crushed carmine beetles. Your cheeks are dusted with ground ochre. Your eyes, lined in black kohl, scream sophistication, and also, I've been up since 4 AM reapplying toxic sludge to my face. And if you think it stops there, just wait until someone hands you the perfume cone. Perfume cones were worn on top of the head. Actual cones of scented animal fat that slowly melted throughout the day, releasing fragrance as they oozed down your wig and into your ears. They were like aromatherapy candles, except on your skull, and they dripped, constantly. If that doesn't scream elegance, nothing does. You're starting to sweat now, not from the heat, but from the sheer volume of unidentifiable goo seeping into your skin. Somewhere deep in your pores, ancient copper salts and goat tallow are having a party. A very toxic, dermatologically irresponsible party. Meanwhile, across the Mediterranean, the Romans are discovering new ways to ruin their faces. You'd think being more advanced would mean better skincare, but no. Roman women regularly used face masks made from bread soaked in donkey milk, or barley flour mixed with butter and goose grease. The goal? Skin as white as marble. The method? A tragic combination of bleach, animal parts, and literal lead paint. Lead-based makeup, known as ceruse, was all the rage. It whitened the skin, smoothed blemishes, and killed you very, very slowly. The more you used it, the more damaged your skin became, which meant you needed more of it. A cycle of beauty addiction where the final look was ethereal ghost bride with a side of kidney failure. You try to shift your legs but realise they're stuck to the bench. Your thighs have adhered to the stone from a mixture of honey, resin, and good intentions. You're not entirely sure which part was supposed to exfoliate you, but the answer might be yes. And when bedtime comes, you don't even get to wash it off. Most people didn't bathe daily. Instead, You sleep in your beauty mask, crusted, flaking, and lightly rancid, while trying not to breathe in the fumes from your still dripping perfume cone. You've become a scented candle of self-inflicted suffering. And now that you've endured the full-body fondue of ancient skincare, it's time to tackle the next ritual in your beauty horror journey. Because smooth, hairless skin wasn't just fashionable, it was mandatory. And achieving it meant giving pain a seat at the vanity table. You're standing in a dimly lit chamber in ancient Mesopotamia, wrapped in a stiff linen cloth that itches with every breath. You're already sweating from the thick paste on your legs. It's made from sugar, water, and lemon. Sounds refreshing, until you realise the sugar has crystallised into something that resembles hot tree sap, and is now being yanked from your shins with a piece of papyrus and the enthusiasm of someone extracting demons. Congratulations, you've just discovered the earliest form of waxing. This sticky torture method, known later as sugaring, dates back thousands of years and was especially popular in ancient Egypt and Persia. Hairlessness symbolised purity, youth, and elite status, which meant even the poorest women sometimes resorted to plucking every visible strand of hair with a pair of handmade bronze tweezers. Eyebrows, armpits, forearms, sometimes even the scalp. Anywhere hair dared to grow, a ritual awaited. You shift your weight and try not to flinch as someone prepares the next stage. A thin string is looped around your face and snapped rhythmically to remove every tiny hair from your cheeks and jawline. The technique is threading, and while it's still around today in more sanitary settings, here it's being performed with a string that was probably also used to hang onions last week. But not everyone had access to wax or lemon or thread, so they got creative. In ancient Greece, women sometimes used pumice stones to sand their skin smooth. Not exfoliate, sand, as in literal scraping. You would rub your legs until they were hairless, red, and only slightly less functional than raw beef. Some even used burned nutshells or coarse cloth dipped in oil and ash. The Romans took things further, naturally. They developed something called the strigil, a curved metal tool used to scrape off oil, sweat, and hair all at once. Athletes used it in public bathhouses. You'd lather up with scented oil, then someone would stand beside you and scrape your body until you looked like a freshly plucked chicken. This wasn't a private ritual. This was a social activity, a bonding experience based on mutual scraping, and if you were lucky enough to afford it, you might commission a servant to tweeze your body hairs one by one. Yes, every hair. Roman aristocrats were known to keep slaves whose job description included nothing but full-time hair plucking. Imagine explaining that at a dinner party. Meanwhile in India, early Ayurvedic texts described the use of mixtures made from turmeric and chickpea flour to reduce hair growth. You'd rub it into your skin until your arm looked like it had been in a sandstorm, then rinse with cold water and a silent scream. It worked about as well as you'd expect, which is to say, not at all. But tradition has its own momentum, especially when pain is involved. You now lie back on a mat made from palm fronds, legs sticky, arms burning, and upper lip trembling in anticipation. A hot stone is pressed gently along your brow, followed by a strip of linen soaked in resin and honey. It cools slightly, then rips. Your soul exits your body for a brief moment before returning with a limp. Some cultures believed certain times of the lunar cycle were better for hair removal. If you did it under a waxing moon, hair would grow back slower. If done under a full moon, it might never return at all. This mystical beauty calendar turned personal grooming into an astrological gamble. Your face wasn't just shaped by fashion, it was shaped by the phases of the sky and how badly you wanted to avoid having your eyebrows ripped out during a solar eclipse. But it wasn't just about vanity. Hair removal was tied to hygiene, class, and even religious devotion. In ancient Japan, noble women plucked their eyebrows entirely and painted new ones halfway up their foreheads. In medieval Europe, women shaved their hairlines back to elongate the forehead. This wasn't just a style choice, it was a deeply respected beauty ideal. The more you looked like an alien priestess, the more compliments you got from your neighbours who also smelled like cheese and wood smoke. And if you think this ritual was confined to women, think again. Men were just as involved. Ancient Egyptians shaved their entire bodies, including heads and beards, to show cleanliness and status. Roman men had barbers who would tweeze their armpits in the middle of crowded streets. Greek statues show smooth, hairless forms not because people didn't grow hair, but because they went to incredible lengths to pretend they didn't. You sit in silence now, skin humming with micro-abrasions. You've been plucked, burned, scraped, and polished. Your eyebrows are gone, your legs are sticky, and your soul is deeply confused. But culturally speaking, you're glowing. Somewhere between divinely smooth and medically alarming. The sun sets outside your window. You watch the shadows lengthen as a woman walks past holding a pan of hot ash and beeswax. She's heading to the next client. You hear a scream, then laughter. This is just the cost of beauty. Pain, humiliation, and questionable hygiene. And you haven't even touched your hair yet. Because tomorrow, it's time to learn what happens when medieval dye meets fermented pigeon droppings. Your scalp is still tender from the threading ritual, and your arms feel like they've been sanded with coral. But your beauty tormentor isn't finished with you yet. Now it's time to brighten things up a bit. With dye. Ancient dye. The kind that stains your skin, burns your nostrils, and may or may not contain something that recently flew through a cathedral window. You're crouched on a wooden stool as someone grinds a sticky brown mixture in a cracked bowl. The aroma hits you first. Sharp, sulphurous, and definitely organic. You squint. There's something chunky in the paste. You ask what it is, and the answer comes without hesitation. Pigeon droppings, mixed with lye for colour, and it's going on your head. In medieval Europe, blonde hair was the ultimate flex. It was a symbol of youth, virtue, and vaguely angelic approval. Naturally, most people didn't have it, so they died. And since bleach hadn't been invented yet, they reached for what they did have. Fermented bird waste, aged urine, crushed bark, burnt lime, vinegar, wine, sometimes all in the same vat. You weren't just changing your hair colour, you were turning your entire head into a bubbling chemistry experiment. The Romans weren't any better. In fact, they may have been worse. They used a blend of boiled walnut shells, lead salts, and soot to darken their hair. It works surprisingly well if you were aiming for forest elf with mercury poisoning. Roman texts even advised adding vinegar to help the dye set. No one questioned the hair loss. That was just part of the glamour. Across the ancient world, henna was one of the few relatively sane options. Used in ancient Egypt, India, and Mesopotamia, henna came from the dried leaves of the Lawsonia inermis plant. It created vibrant reddish tones and was used for both hair and body art. The process was lengthy, required patience, and turned your hands and feet orange for days. Still, compared to having molten pigeon paste massaged into your follicles, it felt like a spa day. You tilt your head forward and the stylist begins slathering the mixture on. It's warm. Too warm. Somewhere between fresh porridge and mild regret. The mixture bubbles slightly as it reacts with your scalp oil. That's probably fine. There's a bucket of water nearby. No, not for rinsing. For drinking. You're going to need it. In Renaissance Italy, women went to extreme lengths to achieve the coveted golden hair tone known as biondo veneziano. They bleached their hair with sulphur and sat for hours in the sun with their locks spread across wide-brimmed bonnets that had the tops cut out. These were called solanas. From a distance, it looked like an entire piazza of women had forgotten how hats work. The smell of scorched sulphur and sweat baked into the wind, creating an olfactory reminder that beauty was never silent or subtle. Even in ancient China, elaborate hair dye techniques existed. One popular mixture involved boiling tea leaves, iron filings, and vinegar to create an inky black dye. This was used to signify maturity, wisdom, or the need to hide the fact that you were 38 and had seen too much. Some formulas also included crushed gall nuts, which were harvested from trees that had been parasitized by insects. In other words, it was hair dye made from the botanical equivalent of a scab. You begin to itch. That's normal. So is the tingling, the redness, the sudden wave of lightheadedness. The stylist pats your shoulder with a reassuring hand that smells like soap made from ashes and goat fat. She says something about leaving it on for 4 hours, maybe 5. It depends on how bold you want the result to be. You consider how much dignity you're willing to sacrifice for colour that might not even be visible in this century's candlelight. But hair dye wasn't just cosmetic. In some cultures, it was spiritual. Among the Celts, warriors often bleached their hair with lime water before battle to appear more fearsome. The process stripped the hair of moisture and turned it stiff, sometimes greenish-white. It was less glamorous and more forest witch who headbutts bears. But it got the job done. In India, ancient Ayurvedic recipes for hair colour included hibiscus, amla, indigo, and brahmi. These were mixed into pastes and applied under steaming towels, with the whole ritual lasting hours. It was meditative, it was nourishing. It was also a good way to accidentally dye your pillows purple for the next 2 weeks. You try not to breathe as the dye settles into your scalp. A bowl of rose water is offered to waft under your nose. It doesn't help. Nothing helps. You look around the room and notice a rack of combs made from bone, metal, and one that might be old fish cartilage. Hygiene is theoretical. Beauty is war. And your scalp is the battlefield. Some medieval women even used bloodletting before dyeing their hair, believing that it opened the pores and made the colour more vibrant. Others shaved their heads entirely and wore elaborate wigs dusted with saffron or turmeric to achieve that golden glow without the risk of scalp inflammation. That was the high-tech version. The low-tech version involved mixing ash with cow bile and hoping for the best. You're not sure how much time has passed. The air has thickened. Your head feels like it's been glazed. You try to move, but the mixture has hardened into a helmet. The stylist returns with a rinsing bucket. It's filled with something that smells suspiciously like spoiled mead and wood ash. You lean back. The rinse begins. It's cold. So cold, it seeps into your ear. You question your life choices. You wonder if this look will catch on. You hope not. Because if fashion is a cycle, you do not want to be responsible for bringing this one back. The final result is passable, slightly red, a little crunchy. It crackles when you walk, but it's yours. You're now chemically aligned with centuries of humans who willingly coated themselves in grime and glory to feel desirable. And the next ritual is already waiting. Because while your scalp recovers, your teeth are about to go through something far more disturbing. Ancient breath fresheners and dental cosmetics. Coming up next. Get ready to gargle with charcoal, chew some resin, and maybe file your teeth into points. Your scalp still smells like vinegar and trauma, but your hair now has a subtle pigeon-glazed sheen that might pass for fashionable in low candlelight. Just as you begin to enjoy the sensation of breathing through a mostly cooled skull, someone offers you a bowl of paste and a piece of twine. You're instructed to smile, wider. The ritual is not over. It is only moving south. Oral hygiene has arrived. You open your mouth and the world reacts. It's not your fault. You haven't eaten in hours, but your breath smells like the back end of a camel who's been drinking from a stagnant bath. This is historically accurate. Ancient people understood that mouths could be horrifying, and they did everything within their very limited understanding of anatomy to fix the issue. A nearby attendant hands you a soft twig with frayed ends. It smells like cinnamon bark and desperation. This is your toothbrush. Technically it's a chew stick, and in many parts of the ancient world it works surprisingly well. Cultures across Africa, Asia and the Middle East used twigs from specific trees like Salvadora persica that had natural antimicrobial properties. You chew the end until it becomes a little brush, then scrub. Efficient, biodegradable, and less terrifying than what the Romans are about to put in your mouth. The Roman version of toothpaste included crushed bones, oyster shells, and powdered deer antler. These were ground into a fine grit and mixed with vinegar or urine. Yes, urine. A beloved multi-purpose fluid in the ancient world. It was considered a powerful whitening agent due to its ammonia content. Some Roman poets even joked about the gleaming teeth of Spaniards who supposedly used imported Portuguese urine for maximum freshness. Whether that was envy or shade remains unclear. You're handed a small pot of black powder, charcoal, a staple of ancient dental care in India, Egypt and beyond. It absorbs odours, scrubs plaque, and leaves your teeth looking vaguely soot-covered but technically clean. Egyptians combined burnt eggshells with powdered pumice to make their version of toothpaste. Sometimes they added myrrh for flavour, other times it was just more ash. You press your fingers into the mix and begin scrubbing, feeling your gums recede out of self-defence. In medieval Europe, things took a stranger turn. People occasionally cleaned their teeth with rough cloths dipped in salt and vinegar. Some used sage or mint leaves, rubbed directly onto the gums. Others went the full Gothic route and simply masked the odour with perfumes and cloves, skipping hygiene altogether. There are records of nobles who would rub their gums with crushed gemstones or alum, believing it preserved youth. What it actually did was ruin enamel and cause your teeth to fall out in increasingly dramatic ways. You spit into a nearby basin. The mixture hits the bottom with a hiss. That could be the charcoal reacting with the vinegar, or possibly the slow chemical collapse of your dental dignity. Your teeth feel smooth, but your tongue is coated in something that tastes like burnt parchment and regret. You're told this is normal. You're also handed a piece of hardened tree resin to chew. It is meant to freshen the breath. Chewing gums in antiquity were often made from tree sap or frankincense. The Greeks used mastic, a resin from the mastic tree that had antibacterial properties, and a pleasant taste if you didn't mind chewing something that looked like fossilized bird droppings. Native Americans used spruce sap. In Asia, betel nut chewing became common, although it stained the teeth a brilliant red and slowly shredded the gums. Beauty is balance. Between mint and madness, you're instructed to smile again, wider. The charcoal has settled into the crevices of your teeth, giving you the cheerful grin of a soot-covered gargoyle. The attendant frowns and begins preparing a rinse. It's a mix of wine and herbs boiled with vinegar. Some traditions also called for rosewater or goat's milk, depending on what was available and how desperate you were. You gargle, it burns, you swallow reflexively. Everyone nods in approval. In Aztec society, dental hygiene included filing teeth into points and inlaying them with precious stones. The Maya did it too. Jade, turquoise, even gold studs embedded directly into the enamel. This was cosmetic enhancement that required drilling without anesthesia. Your whimpers were considered part of the process, a sound that signalled both suffering and style. But even the most luxurious smiles were temporary. Dental decay was rampant across nearly every civilization. Sugar was rare in many parts of the ancient world, but starchy diets and a lack of flossing meant that by your 30s, you were probably missing a few molars. In medieval Europe, if a tooth became infected, it was extracted with forceps or by a blacksmith wielding pliers. Barbers often doubled as tooth pullers. You could go in for a haircut and leave with one fewer tooth and a lesson in humility. You're lucky today. There are no extractions, no decorative drills, no flaming tongs, just a final rinse and a cloth to wipe your mouth. Your lips feel dry, so you reach for a balm made from beeswax and rose oil. It smells lovely. Then you notice the label. It contains rendered pig fat and crushed pearls. That seems excessive, but your mouth no longer smells like barnwood, and in this era, that qualifies as a small miracle. You close your mouth and breathe through your nose. Everything tastes like charcoal and vinegar. Your gums sting, your lips tingle, your teeth are coated in a fine grit that might be ash or powdered bone or something worse that nobody bothered to label. You've never felt more glamorous. And now, with your breath marginally fresher and your enamel hanging on by a thread, it's time to prepare your nails. Because ancient manicures were not just about colour. They involved knives, acids, and sometimes literal bloodletting. The next phase of your transformation is waiting. Try not to flinch. Your mouth still feels like it's been sandblasted with vinegar and optimism, but you've survived the dental ritual with most of your enamel intact. Unfortunately, there's still one part of your body that looks entirely too natural. Your hands. The ancient world considered unadorned fingers a sign of either poverty or laziness, and both were unacceptable if you were trying to pass as presentable. Your motion toward a flat stone slab covered in ceramic pots, bronze phials, and what looks suspiciously like a small meat hook. It's a manicure station. Sort of. The aesthetic is less day spa and more sacrificial prep table. You sit. A woman with stained fingertips takes your hand and immediately begins scraping your nails with a sliver of bone. There is no explanation. This is the warm-up. Manicures date back at least to 3200 BCE, when Babylonian warriors painted their nails with kohl before battle. Darker colours were reserved for the nobility. Light colours were for the lower classes. You were judged based on the hue of your cuticles. In ancient China, nail tinting became even more intense. The Zhou dynasty favoured long nails coated with egg whites, beeswax, and coloured powders made from crushed flowers and minerals. Nobles would grow their nails several inches long and protect them with elaborate gold guards. These were not functional hands. They were ceremonial claws designed to show off how little manual labour you did. Your own hands, sadly, are not free from manual labour. They're dry, cracked, and still faintly stained with charcoal from the dental adventure. The attendant dips your fingers into a small bowl of vinegar and rose water, then begins pushing back your cuticles with a blunt fishbone. It is not gentle. There is no soothing music. There is no polite small talk about weekend plans. Just the sound of flesh being poked and the faint aroma of pickled fingers. In ancient Egypt, nail colour indicated social rank. Red was for the elite, bright and bold, often applied using henna paste. The deeper the stain, the wealthier you were assumed to be. Cleopatra supposedly favoured crimson fingertips. Commoners had to settle for orange or pale yellow. Henna was made from crushed leaves soaked in water, left to ferment, and applied in thick layers. It smelled earthy and sour like fermented tea and hope. It stained not only the nail but the skin surrounding it. If your manicure didn't scream status, it wasn't worth the effort. You feel a prick. A small bead of blood rises near your nail bed. The attendant nods approvingly. In some parts of the ancient world, this was part of the process. Bloodletting wasn't just medical. It was sometimes cosmetic. Letting blood from the hands was believed to improve circulation, skin colour, even emotional balance. In medieval Europe, some beauty manuals suggested light bloodletting to purge bad humours and brighten the skin. Of course, this was before germ theory and band-aids. A small knife is now being used to shape your nails. It is not sharp. It is old, possibly older than you. Every scrape sends vibrations up your wrist and into your jaw. You try to hold still as the blade hacks off uneven edges, then polishes them with a strip of rough linen dipped in animal fat. The result is greasy, red, and technically even. You're offered a nail tint. The paste is dark purple and smells like crushed berries and iron. You don't ask what's in it. You already know it's probably something like lead oxide or rust powder. Roman women used to darken their nails with mixtures that included blood, soot, and wine sediment. The goal was to appear well-bred and exotic. The result was often an infection that made your fingertips glow in the dark when no one was looking. In India, Ayurvedic beauty practices included hand massages with herbal oils and nail dyes made from herbs like bringraj and turmeric. These concoctions were believed to improve vitality and reduce aging signs. You could spot someone's wellness by the shine on their thumbnail. In Japan, the Heian period elite preferred delicate pinks made from safflower petals. They would soak their hands in the dye for hours, then wrap them in silk until the colour set. This was a whole day's activity. You skipped lunch, you sacrificed circulation, but your hands whispered luxury. You glanced down at your own. They looked like you dipped them in jam and rolled them across a barn floor. The colour is patchy, the nails uneven, and there is now a suspicious numbness in your left pinky. The attendant says it's a sign the dye is working. You wonder if it's more of a sign that your nervous system is reconsidering its contract. In some cultures, long nails weren't just for beauty. They were for intimidation. Ancient Vietnamese nobility sometimes grew their nails so long they curled like ribbons. Servants would help with everyday tasks: eating, bathing, writing, scratching itches. Your hands became trophies, proof that you had ascended above the realm of usefulness. You could not fight or build or plant. You could only be admired, until you tripped over your own talons and had to start again from the nubs. Your nails are now wrapped in cloth. It's a curing technique. You're told to leave them for 6 hours, maybe overnight depending on the humidity. You try to ask how you're supposed to function in the meantime. The answer is silence and a gentle smirk. You're not supposed to function. You're supposed to look fabulous. As your hands throb and your fingertips tingle with either beauty or impending necrosis, the final step is introduced. A scented hand powder made from ground sandalwood, dried rose petals, and possibly crushed beetle shells. It is applied generously, coating your wrists and knuckles in fragrant dust. You now smell like a botanical graveyard, but you are beautiful, and that is all that matters. Your hands are lifted, admired, and declared acceptable. The ritual is complete. You're told not to touch anything for at least a full day. You nod solemnly, and then immediately ruin the finish by scratching your forehead. It itches from the henna. Someone approaches with a new tray, small pots of powder, tiny brushes, a scrap of rabbit fur. It is time to do your face. Ancient blushes, eyebrow stencils, lead foundation. You're not ready. But readiness is irrelevant. Vanity marches on. Your fingers are wrapped in linen and still radiating the faint sting of a vinegar soak. But now the beauty attendants are examining your face with the silent precision of funeral artists. Your cheeks are declared too lifelike. Your complexion is tragically uneven. The solution? A thick layer of powder so pale and so toxic that it could probably kill a medium-sized goat if applied with enough enthusiasm. A small clay dish is brought forward. Inside, a fine white dust. It looks like flour. It smells like wet coins and antique furniture. This is your foundation. It is made from lead, not contains lead. It is lead, ground, refined, and mixed with vinegar or animal fat to help it stick to your skin like wet plaster on a corpse. You're about to become beautiful in the most deadly way possible. Lead-based cosmetics were prized across ancient Rome, Renaissance Europe, and even parts of Asia. Known as ceruse, it was used to whiten the skin and conceal blemishes. A glowing, pale face suggested wealth and status. If your skin looked like uncooked bread dough, you were clearly doing something right. The fashion was so widespread that many women applied it daily, layer upon layer, until their pores surrendered entirely and their skin began to rot underneath. You're handed a soft cloth dipped in rosewater. You wipe your face gently, which stings slightly because you still have remnants of ashen pigeon residue from previous treatments. The powder is then applied, not brushed, pressed, with fingers, hard. It clings to every crevice and wrinkle like regret. Within moments, you look less like a human and more like a very fashionable statue who has not breathed in several days. Ancient Japanese nobility also embraced the pale aesthetic. The oshiroi was a white powder made from rice flour or ground oyster shell, later replaced with zinc and lead. Geisha and kabuki performers wore thick coats of this powder to signify elegance and refinement. The result was ethereal. The sensation was closer to suffocation. Many suffered from acne, rashes, and chemical burns that were simply powdered over the next day. The blush comes next. A cracked shell holds a mixture of red ochre and crushed flowers. It's applied with a rabbit foot, not a brush, a literal foot. The texture is uneven. Your cheeks now glow with the vibrancy of a startled beetroot. In medieval Europe, rouge was often made from cochineal beetles or cinnabar. The latter contains mercury. This made your cheeks glow and your brain slowly melt. But no one noticed because the colour was fabulous. You catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished bronze mirror. Your skin is the colour of old parchment. Your cheeks burn like angry apples. You have become the living embodiment of noble suffering. In Tudor England, Queen Elizabeth I reportedly used a heavy white paste of lead and vinegar to cover her smallpox scars. The fashion trickled down the social ladder, turning countless faces into slowly collapsing masks. Some women reportedly lost entire patches of skin. The solution? Apply more. Always more. The powder cakes around your nose. You try to inhale and instead cough up a small cloud of glamour. An assistant dabs at your face with a strip of linen soaked in vinegar. It stings. Then comes the final touch. A dusting of pearl powder across the forehead and chin. It is supposed to reflect light. It also contains crushed mollusk shell, which is technically calcium carbonate, but feels like powdered chalk mixed with crushed regrets. Ancient Indian beauty texts recommended using sandalwood paste or turmeric to brighten the skin. These were less dangerous, but also less dramatic. The fashion in certain circles was for a face so pale that people genuinely asked if you were unwell. This was considered a compliment. In some cases, fainting was encouraged. A weak pulse meant you weren't labouring in the fields like a peasant. You were lounging in a tower, slowly dissolving into legend. You blink and a chunk of powder flakes off your eyebrow. The assistant quickly reapplies it. You're told not to smile or sweat for the next several hours, or the whole mask might slide off. You ask if breathing is still allowed. The answer is a shrug and a warning not to exhale too forcefully through your nose. In Renaissance Venice, fashionable women painted blue veins on their foreheads to enhance the illusion of translucence. These were sometimes drawn with lapis lazuli or crushed azurite. You looked like a sickly porcelain doll who had wandered away from the afterlife, and yet you were admired. Poems were written about your perfect ghost-like glow. You couldn't touch your face or go outside for long, but you were radiant, and slowly being poisoned. You shift in your seat. The powder has begun to itch. This is normal. That's just the lead reacting with your sweat. The assistant offers a small fan made from palm fronds. You wave it gently and hope that the breeze does not reveal the crumbling truth beneath the powder. Beauty is about illusion. Also endurance. A small pot of eyebrow paste is now opened. It is dark, thick. It smells faintly of soot and cloves. It is made from crushed charcoal, gum resin, and possibly ash from the ceremonial incense burner that hasn't been cleaned since last harvest. Your eyebrows are painted on with a tiny stick. In ancient Persia, arched brows were a sign of intelligence. In China, various brow shapes had specific names and meanings. Willow leaf, butterfly wing, demon tail. Your eyebrows fall somewhere between trembling raccoon and startled priest. The final layer is a translucent veil of scented powder. Lavender, cinnamon, powdered rose petal, all meant to mask the underlying aromas of metal, decay, and desperation. You sneeze violently. Half of your right cheek disintegrates into a puff of white. The assistant sighs and begins again. This was normal. Beauty wasn't about comfort. It was about persistence. Every culture had its own version of facial elegance, and almost none of them involved anything remotely healthy. Whether it was ash and grease in Babylon, bird fat and resin in Egypt, or crushed pearl and vinegar in imperial China, the goal was always the same. Hide the truth. Paint the fantasy. Hope your liver holds out. You stand up slowly. Your face feels like it could crack if you blink too hard. You nod in appreciation. The attendants nod back. You have achieved the look. You're now an ancient masterpiece of facial fashion, held together with powder, plants, and low-level toxins. And now that your cheeks are shimmering with hazard and your skin is sealed beneath a layer of lies, it is time to address your scent. Ancient deodorants, perfume cones, armpit salves made from crushed fish and herbs. Prepare yourself, the nose is next. Your cheeks are crusted with powder, your lips are flushed with berry-stained confidence, and your face has been chemically embalmed in something that probably qualifies as an early prototype of drywall. But no amount of facial elegance will help if the rest of you smells like a compost pile in July. So now the attention turns to your armpits. A large ceramic bowl is brought forward. It's filled with a soft greenish paste. You lean in. The scent is complex. At first it's sweet, then smoky, then unmistakably fishy. You're told this is a traditional Egyptian deodorant made from myrrh, cinnamon oil and ground tortoise shell. You ask if the tortoise was consulted beforehand. No one answers. Ancient body odour was not simply tolerated. It was battled with every sticky, smouldering and stomach-churning substance the ancient world could produce. In Egypt, armpit salves were made from incense resins, animal fats and sometimes crushed carob pods. These were smeared into the creases of the body in thick, tar-like layers. The mixture didn't stop sweat. It just replaced the natural odour with something closer to burnt tree bark and wet goat fur. Technically an improvement. You lift your arm as the salve is applied. It's warm, almost alive. It sticks to your skin like wet honey mixed with broken pottery. A small fan is waved in your face to keep you from fainting. The scent is strong enough to chase away the memory of powdered lead and floral decay. This is intentional. Beauty was about distraction. If you could make people forget how close your skin was to actively fermenting, you were doing something right. The Romans approached body odour like it was a public crisis. They bathed frequently, scrubbed with oils, and scraped everything off with metal tools called strigils. But between baths, many turned to perfumes. Real perfumes. Potent, luxurious, ruinously expensive mixtures of flowers, spices, animal musk, and occasionally a drop of something unholy. They didn't dab it on. They soaked in it. One Roman historian complained that you could smell certain men 3 blocks away and still not be sure whether you wanted to marry them or file a complaint with the Senate. A small vial is brought forward. It contains a thick, amber-coloured oil called kaifi. This was a legendary Egyptian fragrance used in rituals, beauty routines, and fumigations. It included ingredients like honey, frankincense, myrrh, raisins, cinnamon, and wine. Some recipes called for up to 16 ingredients, including mint, juniper, and the occasional dash of fermented barley beer. It was boiled, aged, strained, and worn like armour. You're handed a reed stick and told to apply it behind your ears, under your arms, and between your toes. Apparently the feet were also considered emotional influencers. You're then presented with the pièce de résistance, a perfume cone, roughly the size of a small apple, solid white, slightly greasy. It is placed directly on the top of your head. You're told not to move. The cone is made of animal fat infused with perfume and designed to melt slowly throughout the day, releasing scent as it oozes down your scalp and into your wig. It is both a fragrance delivery system and a slow descent into madness. You try to smile. The cone shifts slightly. A bead of cinnamon-scented grease slides down your temple. It is cooling, and also horrifying. There is nothing you can do about it. Medieval Europe had its own approach to masking odour. One strategy was pomanders, hollow spheres filled with herbs and hung from belts or necklaces. Wealthy people would walk through the streets gently swinging these herbal grenades under their noses to avoid the smell of open sewers, unwashed citizens and livestock. A pomander might contain cloves, nutmeg, ambergris and dried flowers. Ambergris, by the way, is whale vomit. A luxury item, a fashion statement, a gamble. Less fortunate individuals relied on sweat rags soaked in vinegar or wrapped sprigs of lavender under their arms. Some even filled their sleeves with crushed mint or thyme. And then there were those who simply never bathed and considered strong perfume a substitute for hygiene. It wasn't uncommon for someone to reapply rose oil every morning while scraping dirt from their scalp with a fork. In parts of ancient India, perfumes were taken internally. That's right. You would drink certain herbal tinctures in the belief that your sweat would naturally begin to smell better. Many recipes included camphor, sandalwood, cardamom and sugar. The effect was debatable. Some claimed it worked wonders. Others likely died from trying to become human incense burners. Back in Egypt, you're now fully scented. Your armpits glisten. Your neck is glazed. Your scalp is actively dripping. The attendants nod with solemn approval. You have become a walking bouquet of herbs, meat, and metaphysical confusion. You're not so much perfumed as marinated. You're offered a final touch, a sachet, a small fabric pouch to be tucked into your chestband or under your belt. Inside, dried rose petals, coriander seeds, and something powdery that smells like crushed fennel and lint. It is supposed to absorb sweat and preserve your aura. You place it carefully beneath your rib cage and try not to breathe too deeply. Perfume in the ancient world was not limited to the body. People scented their clothes, furniture, and even their pets. There are records of Roman aristocrats perfuming their walls, their servants, and their chamber pots. In India, royals perfumed the floors of their palaces with sandalwood water. In Persia, emperors perfumed their falcons. Every object became a potential olfactory weapon. You are motioned to stand. The perfume cone shifts again, leaving a trail of resin across your wig. You sway slightly. You're both fragrant and unstable. The scent is powerful enough to attract lovers and possibly insects. This is acceptable. The next phase awaits, your eyes. Lashes must be darkened, eyelids painted, ancient mascara, crushed stones, burned almonds, ritual soot. Prepare to stare directly into the past. Your forehead is slowly leaking perfume. Your armpits smell like sweetened meat, and your face, caked in layers of powder and pigment, has started to develop fine hairline cracks like the surface of a desert stone. None of this matters, because now it's time to decorate your eyes, not just highlight them, adorn them. In the ancient world, your eyes were not simply tools for vision. They were mystical, magnetic, and potentially lethal when outlined correctly. A small tray is set before you. On it, several black stones, a bronze stylus, a stick of burnt wood, and a small pot of glistening sludge. The stylus leans in and begins mixing. The paste is dark, oily, smells faintly like smoke and earth. You're told it is kohl, not the store, the original. The sacred gritty black powder made from galena, a natural mineral form of lead sulfide. It was applied to the eyes of Egyptian royalty, priests, and anyone with access to a steady hand and a high pain tolerance. You tilt your chin. The stylus is dipped in the kohl and then dragged gently across your lower lash line. The sensation is cold and dry and somehow gritty and wet at the same time. Your eye twitches. You're reassured. The twitching means it's working. Ancient Egyptians believed kohl had both aesthetic and protective properties. It shielded the eyes from the harsh desert sun. It repelled evil spirits. It reduced eye infections. It also slowly introduced lead into your bloodstream, but that part was less advertised. Children were kohl-lined before festivals. Corpses were adorned before burial. Your eyes were not just features, they were celestial symbols. The Eye of Horus was one of the most sacred emblems in Egyptian mythology. If your eyeliner resembled a divine falcon's gaze, you were doing something right. The stylus moves to the upper lid. You're instructed to hold still. You fail. The stylus drags slightly too high. A smear occurs. The stylist dabs it with a strip of linen soaked in rose water and vinegar. The vinegar stings. Your eye begins to water. You now look like you've been both spiritually awakened and physically assaulted. This is progress. Across the Mediterranean, the Greeks and Romans also embraced eye cosmetics. Roman women used soot mixed with goose fat or antimony to darken their lashes and brows. The result was glossy and bold, and occasionally caused eye swelling, but the compliments made it worth it. Some even used crushed burnt cork or ground up charred rose petals. They applied it with bone combs or delicate glass rods, all designed to elongate the lashes and darken the lids until you resembled a statue who knew secrets. In ancient India, kajal became the go-to eye cosmetic. It was made by collecting soot from a flame and mixing it with ghee or castor oil. Mothers would line their babies' eyes with it to protect them from the evil eye and enhance their beauty. Some recipes included camphor or saffron for cooling effects. You're now being offered something similar. A small cone of black waxy substance is gently pressed against your waterline. It tingles, then burns, then cools again. You're not sure if it's working or if your optic nerve is filing a formal complaint. In medieval Islamic societies, kohl was both cosmetic and religious. The Prophet Muhammad was said to use kohl and encouraged its use for its supposed medicinal benefits. Islamic scholars even wrote treatises on the proper preparation of kohl, including instructions on selecting galena and grinding it in the direction of the wind to avoid contamination. Some recipes were boiled, others were sun-dried. All of them went directly into your eye socket with the casual confidence of someone who had never heard of safety warnings. You blink carefully. The lower lids have been finished. They gleam like obsidian. Now it's time for colour. Not all eyes were lined in black. In Mesopotamia, green eyeshadow made from malachite was extremely popular. It was crushed into fine powder, mixed with fat or oil, and smeared across the upper lids in thick arcs. It gave the wearer a serpentine shimmer and a touch of copper poisoning. You're now handed a small bowl of green dust. It smells like wet copper and celery. You nod. You're ready. The stylist uses a fingertip to apply the powder. There is no brush, just skin on skin. The texture is gritty and oddly damp. It spreads unevenly but glows under the torchlight. Your eyelids now resemble sunlit moss on a river rock. This is desirable. Your eyes are declared bright enough to ward off death. You hope this is a compliment. In some ancient Chinese dynasties, powdered pearl or crushed gold leaf was mixed into eyeshadow for special ceremonies. This shimmered under lamplight and signalled divine favour. In Mesoamerica, the Maya painted their eyelids with crushed insects and charcoal, using delicate feathers as brushes. The goal was transformation. You were not just beautifying, you were becoming something otherworldly. The stylist now moves to the lashes. In Renaissance Italy, women darken their lashes with lamp black applied using needles or sharpened sticks. They would separate each lash for maximum dramatic effect. Some recipes included egg yolk and soot, others burnt almonds and wax. You're handed a small rod and told to blink slowly while it is dragged across your upper lashes. It feels like applying tree sap to spider legs. Several lashes stick together. One falls off entirely. The stylist does not react. Loss is part of the process. You are now warned not to rub your eyes, or cry, or blink too forcefully. You're given a small feather fan to dry the product, which takes approximately the length of a full lunar cycle. Your vision is slightly blurred. Your lashes feel heavy, but your eyes look enormous, mysterious, and very possibly infected. And now that your gaze has been transformed into a sacred portal of smoky intensity, the next ritual must begin. Your ears. Because beauty was not confined to visible places. Ancient ear care, ritual piercings, decorative wax, mysterious powders, some of it cosmetic, some of it ceremonial, all of it deeply personal and mildly alarming. Your lashes are now lacquered with soot, your eyelids crusted in mineral shimmer, and your pupils dilated from the sheer stress of not blinking. But the transformation isn't finished. One of the attendants lifts your hair and inspects the side of your head like a jeweller assessing a flawed gem. Your ears apparently are naked. Offensively so. It's time to decorate them. A bowl of warm oil is placed beside you. It smells like cloves and cooked onions. You're told it will soften the skin before the piercing. Before you can ask what piercing, someone pulls your earlobe taut and begins to massage the oil in slow, circular motions. You pretend to relax. It doesn't work. Ear piercing is not a modern trend. Humans have been shoving objects through their ears for at least 5,000 years. Ötzi the Iceman, who died around 3,300 BCE, was found with stretched earlobes and what appeared to be primitive ear jewellery. Across ancient cultures, pierced ears meant everything from wealth to spiritual purity to please do not invade my territory, sometimes all at once. You're handed a leather strap to bite down on. A heated bronze needle is raised. The assistant aims. There is a sudden hot pressure, followed by a pop. You feel both lighter and slightly betrayed. The other ear follows, another bite, another pop. A warm cloth is pressed to each lobe. You're congratulated for not screaming. You're then immediately smeared with something that smells like fermented bark and ash. This is your aftercare. In ancient Egypt, earrings were worn by men and women, often as status symbols or protective amulets. Gold hoops, beads, carved gems. Children had their ears pierced at young ages, sometimes as part of religious ceremonies. The wealthier you were, the heavier your earrings. In some tombs they found lobes stretched to the point of architectural failure. The stylist now prepares your first pair. They are not gold, they are not elegant. They are carved bone discs with tiny symbols etched into the surface. Protective signs, you're told, meant to keep evil spirits from entering the body through the ear canal. Apparently that was a real concern. Some believed demons could enter through any hole left unguarded, which explains a lot about ancient fashion. You feel the discs slide into place. They're warm from the fire and slightly sticky. The scent of resin and soot lingers around your jaw. Someone hands you a mirror. You now look like a mystical goat herder who wandered into a sacred cave and emerged mildly cursed but strangely radiant. Across Asia, elaborate ear ornamentation became increasingly common. In India, ancient Ayurvedic texts describe the act of ear piercing, or karnaveda, as a spiritual necessity. It was believed to balance energy and stimulate brain function. Infants were pierced early in life. The earrings often contain gemstones associated with planetary forces. Your earrings contain mostly char residue and mild disappointment. In the Americas, the Maya took earlobe fashion to another level entirely. They stretched their lobes with wooden plugs, shells, jade discs, even gold. Large ear flares symbolized high status and sometimes came with embedded designs representing gods or celestial bodies. The process took months, years. You started with a pinprick and slowly escalated to carrying an entire jewellery collection on one side of your skull. If it bled, that meant it was working. Your own lobes are now cooling. You're told not to sleep on your side for 3 days. You're handed a small cloth pouch filled with herbs and instructed to inhale it nightly for ear balance. You nod, and your earrings jiggle slightly. The weight is unfamiliar. The sense of importance is instant. In medieval Europe, ear piercing had mixed reputations. In some periods, it was fashionable among sailors, who believed it improved eyesight and paid for funerals if the body washed ashore. In others, it was condemned as vanity. Certain religious authorities warned that piercing the body was a form of bodily desecration. Then again, these were the same people applying lead paste to their faces and fasting for spiritual radiance. Consistency was not their strong suit. Your stylist now presents a curious object, a waxy pellet about the size of a small bean. It is shoved gently into your ear. You're told it's for scent. Apparently some people in ancient Mesopotamia stuffed their ears with perfumed wax or crushed myrrh to release fragrance as they moved. You now have cinnamon-scented hearing. There's a slight crackle when you swallow. This is normal. In imperial China, noble women would occasionally glue small gold leaves or lacquered designs directly to the outer ear. Sometimes pearls were pressed into place with natural resin. In some dynasties, a visible, decorated ear was considered a mark of refinement. The rest of your body could be swaddled in 10 layers of silk, but your ears needed to whisper elegance. You're offered a final decoration, a thin red thread tied through the lower earring and looped behind your head. It is symbolic, a protective cord. Some believed it created an energy circuit that kept evil thoughts from leaking out of your skull. Others thought it just looked expensive. You stand, the earrings sway, your head feels slightly off balance. You've been pierced, padded, and powdered within an inch of your sanity. But your ears are beautiful, decorative, potentially magical. This is success. And now, as your skull adjusts to its new status as both visual art and spiritual conduit, it's time to consider your hair. Not the dye, not the removal, the structure, the style. Ancient updos, decorative wigs, animal fat pomades, scalp wax, seashell combs, and everything else that kept the head fashionable and barely functional. Your ears are pierced, padded, threaded, and gently humming with perfumed wax. Your scalp is tender from the weight of too much decoration and not enough explanation. But now your attendants have turned their attention to your hair. The real hair. The stuff still growing on your actual head. This is where the beauty ritual stops pretending and becomes open warfare. You're handed a comb, not plastic, not gentle. It's carved from bone, stained with something dark, and has all the forgiveness of a medieval saw blade. The stylist begins without warning. The first pull makes your neck jolt. The second nearly brings tears. The third snags on something so embedded it may have joined your family tree. You're told to hold still. You do, but your soul begins to detach out of protest. Hair grooming in the ancient world was not optional. It was political, religious, symbolic, and often designed to be physically impossible without help from at least 3 assistants, and a jar of oil large enough to fry a small animal. In ancient Egypt, noble women shaved their heads and wore elaborate wigs made of human hair mixed with palm fibres. These wigs were styled daily, scented with incense, and held in place with beeswax and lard. You now understand why they kept so many servants. One such servant is currently applying a thick salve to your scalp. It is a mix of animal fat, crushed herbs, and something that smells like burned cinnamon and old fish. This, you're told, is your styling wax. It also repels lice, moisturizes dry skin, and can be used to polish bronze if necessary. The mixture is massaged into your roots with such force that your eyebrows lift involuntarily. In ancient Mesopotamia, both men and women curled their hair using heated rods and set the style with bitumen paste. Bitumen, the same sticky substance used for waterproofing boats and sealing city walls. When fashion meets industrial materials, results vary. If the curls held, you looked divine. If they cracked, you left pieces of yourself wherever you went. You're offered a mirror. Your hair is now standing up slightly. It glistens, not in a healthy way, in a molten cheese kind of way. The stylist begins to braid. Tight braids. Fast. Precise. Your skin pulls with every knot. Ancient African cultures perfected intricate braiding patterns that indicated tribal affiliation, marital status, and even fertility. The styles took hours, sometimes days. You're on minute 12 and already questioning the meaning of life. Hair in classical Greece was equally demanding. Women styled their locks into intricate buns held together with pins made of bronze, bone, or if you were especially rich, solid gold. Some hairstyles involved looping the hair around the entire head, then pinning it in place with decorative sticks that doubled as self-defense tools. Your stylist shows you one such pin. It's sharp enough to qualify as a surgical implement. You nod politely and offer your head like a condemned man accepting his fate. In Imperial Rome, the Flavian coiffure became popular. This style required the front hair to be curled into tight ringlets, stacked high on the forehead, while the back was woven into elaborate designs. Wealthy women hired full-time ornatresses or hairdressers who kept their styles intact through a mix of spit, animal glue, and sheer social pressure. If your curls sagged, it reflected poorly on your household. If your stylist slipped, you looked like a startled sheep. Your stylist is now weaving in a ribbon dipped in perfume. The ribbon is damp and cool, made from dyed linen. It's meant to hold your hair in place and ward off foul smells. In ancient China, hair held deep cultural significance. Cutting it was considered a dishonor to one's ancestors. Hairstyles were used to signal age, gender, class, and occasion. During the Tang dynasty, women styled their hair into towering buns and loops, often adorned with birds made of silver or miniature fans. You have neither birds nor fans, just a growing headache and a hairline that feels like it's being pulled into a different century. In Japan, the Nihongami hairstyle reached heights of architectural genius. It involved wax, rice starch, wooden frames, and enough pins to threaten small wildlife. Some styles were so complex that women slept with their heads on small wooden neck rests to preserve the shape overnight. You ask about neck support. You're handed a rolled-up rag and told not to lie down for 12 hours. This is fine. As the styling continues, your scalp begins to tingle. It might be from the clove oil, or the beeswax, or the fact that your circulation is being slowly strangled by your own follicles. A small comb is now used to smooth the sides. A heated bronze rod is passed through your curls. It sizzles faintly. You wonder if your brain is steaming. In parts of medieval Europe, hairstyles became so exaggerated that they drew condemnation from religious leaders. Woven veils, plaited extensions, and false hair were banned in certain churches for promoting vanity. One bishop wrote an entire sermon on the sinfulness of hair braiding. This did nothing to stop the trend. If anything, it made it more exciting. Women began adding bells, charms, and sometimes small animal bones to their hair. If it made noise, you were doing it right. Your stylist now applies a final layer of sealing balm. The scent is floral. The texture is greasy. Your head glistens like a roasted feast centerpiece, but your hair holds. It does not move. It has achieved structural integrity. You are instructed not to sweat, nod, or exist in the wind for the next day. You agree, mostly because your scalp can no longer move without sounding like waxed parchment. And now, as your head cools under the weight of its own majesty, it's time to discuss something far less decorative. Beauty marks, ancient blemish rituals, spots of prestige, painted freckles, mercury dots, moles with meanings. Not all skin was meant to be hidden. Some of it was meant to be enhanced. Your hair is shellacked into place with melted bees. Your face is a powdered reliquary of lead, and the side of your neck has begun to itch in a way that feels both ancient and vaguely legal. But now, with the canvas fully prepared, your attendants begin inspecting your skin for imperfections that need to be enhanced, not concealed, emphasized. It's time to talk about dots, specifically where to put them, what they mean, and whether or not they'll slowly poison you. One of the attendants dips a stick into a tiny pot of dark paste. She points toward your cheek. The spot she selects is not a blemish, not a mole, just a bare patch of skin. She marks it with a single dot and nods solemnly. You now have a beauty mark. You ask what it means. The answer apparently depends on the century, the culture, and which side of your face you were cursed to be born on. In Renaissance France, beauty marks were part of a coded language. A dot near the lips signalled flirtation. One near the right eye meant passion. A mark on the left cheek could mean loyalty, or possibly that you once made out with a powdered wig salesman behind a tavern. It was ambiguous. That was part of the charm. People wore their secrets on their faces, hidden in plain sight beneath a layer of crushed velvet and powdered mercury. You receive another dot, this one near your temple. The paint is thicker, slightly grainy. You're told this one contains lead oxide and vinegar. It adheres better to the powder foundation and lasts longer in rain or tears. It is also lightly toxic. But so is everything else you've applied today. In 18th century England, artificial beauty marks were known as mouches, or flies. They were small pieces of velvet or silk glued onto the face in decorative patterns. Some were shaped like stars or crescent moons. Others resembled birds or musical notes. They were sold in little boxes and applied with a tiny dab of tree sap. You're now being offered one. It is shaped like a teardrop. You're told it is fashionable. You're not told why. Mouches were often used to cover scars from smallpox or bad cosmetic reactions. As the poisons of previous beauty routines ate into the skin, new routines evolved to cover the damage. This cycle continued for centuries. Apply poison, cover damage, celebrate the cover, repeat. In ancient China, certain facial moles were seen as omens. Their location determined whether you were destined for wealth, ruin, or an especially dramatic marriage. Some beauty manuals even encouraged painting fake moles in auspicious places to trick fate. You're now receiving one on the side of your nose. The paste has a bitter herbal scent. You're told it's meant to draw money and repel betrayal. You hope it also repels flies. In the Ottoman Empire, elite women sometimes painted dots or delicate motifs on their cheeks and foreheads, using kohl and saffron. These were sometimes symbolic, sometimes religious, and occasionally just aesthetic rebellion. If the design blurred, it meant the kohl was impure. If it flaked, it meant the saffron had been cut with brick dust. Either way, it was worth the risk if it gave your cheek the look of a mystical manuscript. You now have 5 dots on your face. 2 are symbolic, 1 is superstitious, the others are for symmetry. You look in the mirror and see someone who has possibly won a duel or opened a haunted music box. You're not sure if this face is seductive or cursed. You're assured it's both. In ancient India, the bindi carried religious and social meaning. Placed between the eyebrows, it represented the Ajna chakra, or third eye. Over time, it evolved into a beauty symbol as well, with red, black and gold variations used for fashion and ceremony. Some were permanent, others were applied daily with pigment and ash. You're offered a red bindi made from crushed turmeric and castor oil. You accept. It tingles slightly. You now feel both wise and sticky. In Elizabethan England, moles were associated with witchcraft and temptation. The line between blemish and beauty mark was thin, and sometimes fatal. Women with noticeable facial moles were suspected of consorting with demons. This led to a brief period where beauty marks were designed to look exactly like freckles, which were apparently less suspicious. Freckles did not summon the devil. Dots did. The difference was paper thin and soaked in paranoia. You're handed a fan and told to dry the dots. No blinking, no sweating. If one smudges, it has to be reapplied, and the meaning may change entirely. One slip and you go from mysterious widow to has been hexed by a cabbage merchant. The stakes are unreasonably high for something glued to your skin with tree sap and delusion. In some Native American tribes, facial tattooing included symbolic dots and lines, often signifying tribe, lineage, or achievements. These were not makeup. They were permanent, sacred, and deeply respected. But they too influenced cosmetic fashion. In Europe, fake dots began to appear in patterns that mimicked tribal styles. Badly, with little context, and even less subtlety. Your stylist adds a final touch. A speck of powdered silver is pressed into the centre of one mark. You're told it reflects moonlight. You hope it doesn't reflect your inner regret. You now have a face that is part constellation, part poison catalogue. You're glowing, possibly radioactive, but undeniably fashionable. And now that your dots have been carefully curated, it's time to move lower. The neck, the chest, the collarbone. In ancient beauty, this wasn't wasted space. It was a canvas, and it needed salves, neck whiteners, breast blush, decorative oils, scents, binders, lift rituals, and at least one technique involving crushed snail shells and a pigeon feather. The dots have settled. Your cheeks are a constellation of symbols no one can quite agree on, and your eyelids still tingle from the galena paste slowly waging chemical war on your tear ducts. But now, as the candlelight shifts across your collarbone, the attendants begin studying your neck and upper chest the way a mason might appraise a slightly cracked slab of marble. This area, they explain, must gleam, not glow. Gleam, there's a difference. One is beauty, the other is shame. You're gently reclined. A wide brush made from animal hair is dipped into a bowl of pale cream and dragged from your chin to your clavicle. The texture is cold and oddly gelatinous. It smells like milk that lost its way and became soup. This is your base coat, a mixture of ground white lead, beeswax, vinegar and powdered rice. It is designed to lighten the skin, blur veins, and give the illusion of angelic fragility. It also absorbs moisture and slowly converts your collarbones into calcified soap. Ancient beauty standards were harshest on the neck and chest. In ancient Greece and Rome, a pale upper torso signalled wealth and virtue. Tanned skin meant outdoor labour. Pale skin meant you lounged indoors sipping diluted wine while reciting poems about your own good posture. Women would bleach the chest with chalk, white clay, or lead-based powders. These were sometimes mixed with egg whites for a glossy finish. You now smell like a bakery with boundary issues. The brush returns. This time it deposits a rosy tint across the top of your chest. Not bright. Just enough to hint at inner warmth without suggesting physical activity. In medieval Europe, this technique was known as rouging the bust, and it involved tinting the skin between the breasts with crushed berries, red ochre, or in some cases bloodletting followed by powder application. The idea was to mimic youthful blushing. The result often resembled a sunburn in formal wear. You glance downward. Your skin now glows like a chalkboard that's been lightly assaulted with a rose petal. You're told to sit still while it sets. An assistant blows gently across your collarbones using a straw. Another pats the sides of your neck with linen. A third begins applying fine glitter made from crushed fish scales and mica dust. You cough once. A puff of glamour exits your mouth like a cursed magician. In ancient Egypt, chest adornment was taken to an entirely different level. Scented oils made from lotus, myrrh, and balanos were massaged into the upper body daily. The goal was not only beauty but divine presentation. You weren't just bathing, you were preparing your torso for eternity. Some recipes included powdered resin and animal fat that created a glowing film across the chest. This was considered sensual. It also attracted every insect in a 5-mile radius. You're handed a small mirror. Your neck is now several shades lighter than your hands, your face, and likely your conscience. This is intentional. In 17th century France, the fashion was for the décolletage to be ghostly white, framed by stiff collars and violently lifted bosoms. Necklines plunged low, breasts were pushed high, entire songs were written about collarbones, entire careers were made judging them. Your stylist reaches for a pot of contouring dust. Yes, contouring existed. Ancient Persians used soot and ground pumice to sculpt shadows under the jawline and across the throat. The effect was dramatic and slightly ominous. You now have faint grey smudges under your chin that make you look both noble and very tired. Perfect. The next substance is applied with a feather. It smells like rose petals and disappointment. You ask what it is. You're told it is swan down dipped in saffron oil. In parts of ancient India, women would rub their necks and chests with turmeric and sandalwood to brighten the skin and reduce hair. It worked, technically, but it also stained everything yellow and made your sheets smell like spiced stew. In Japan, the nape was considered especially erotic. Women in the Heian period would paint their faces and necks white, then leave the nape exposed in a dark kimono to create dramatic contrast. The application was done with brushes and tiny stamps. It was both art and seduction. You're now receiving a similar treatment. The back of your neck is painted with 2 pale vertical lines. You cannot see them. You're told to trust the process. A necklace is draped around your throat, not jewellery, makeup, a line of crushed pearl powder and beeswax drawn across your collarbones. It gleams like moonlight. It itches slightly. You're told not to scratch or it will flake off and resemble skin disease. In many cultures, the appearance of the chest was enhanced with tension garments. Ancient Roman strophiums compressed and lifted. Medieval bodices pushed and pinched. The ideal bust was both elevated and immobile. If you could walk without displacing it, you were ready to socialise. You're now being gently wrapped with a linen band soaked in wine and vinegar. This will create lift, you are told. It will also stain every item of clothing you own. Finally, a drop of scent is applied to each clavicle, frankincense on the left, rosewater on the right. This was a technique used by Sumerian priestesses, Egyptian nobles, and French courtesans. The scent would waft upward during conversation and lull your audience into believing you were clean, calm, and not slowly decaying under layers of fatal powder and pigeon glue. You're now instructed not to move for 15 minutes while everything sets. Your chest is dry, your neck is tingling, Your soul has retreated to a higher shelf in your body. But you look magnificent, like a statue who drank perfume and survived. And while your upper half basks in sacred glow, the next beauty ritual begins to circle you like a vulture. It is time to treat your feet. Ancient pedicures, heel scraping, fragrant oils, crushed coral, leather shoes designed to permanently deform your toes. Your lower body has not been forgotten. It has simply been saving its trauma for last. Your chest is dusted with pearl ash. Your neck is locked in place with vinegar binders, and your earlobes still ache from their symbolic puncturing. But you've made a fatal mistake. You shifted your weight, just slightly. And the moment you did, someone looked down. Your feet, raw from days of standing on dirt, oil and regret, are now being assessed like a crime scene. A basin of lukewarm water is placed before you. A stick of pumice is dipped and sharpened like a knife. You're told to sit still while your sins are removed, one toe at a time. In ancient Egypt, foot care was not just hygiene. It was religious, political, and occasionally theatrical. Pharaohs had their feet massaged with aromatic oils daily. Servants exfoliated their heels with sandstone, then painted the toenails with henna or carmine. You, unfortunately, are not a pharaoh, but your foot is being gripped with the confidence of someone who has done this before and is no longer afraid of what lies beneath the calluses. The scraping begins. It is not gentle. Your heel is filed like an old boat being prepped for repainting. The sensation is both numbing and intimate. You stare straight ahead while bits of your soul collect like powdered cheese. In ancient Greece, pedicures were part of the public bathhouse ritual. Men would oil and scrub their feet while discussing politics and philosophy. If your feet cracked, it meant you were out of balance. If they bled, it meant you'd gone too far. Balance was difficult, so was walking afterward. A small knife is now introduced. It's not for defense, it's for trimming the skin between your toes. Your foot is pulled slightly upward. You feel the cool metal along your arch. This is a tradition that dates back to Mesopotamia, where clay tablets recorded foot salves made from sesame oil and crushed date pits. These were applied with fine knives to carve away calluses and ward off fungal spirits. Your own foot is now lighter, possibly shorter. A small pile of regret is swept into a bowl and whisked away. In Imperial China, foot rituals took a darker turn. The practice of foot binding began as a courtly fashion and evolved into a status marker. Starting in childhood, girls' feet were broken, folded, and bound tightly to form the coveted lotus foot shape. This was done to ensure small, delicate steps and display wealth, as bound feet made labour impossible. Shoes became ornamental, embroidered, and entirely dysfunctional. The pain was constant. The infections were frequent. But the social rewards for a time were enormous. You're handed a small brush. The bristles are stiff. The paste is gritty. You're told to apply it to your toes to clean under the nails. You try. The pain is immediate. The sensation is medieval. The result is barely improved. In medieval Europe, feet were largely ignored by the lower classes and exaggerated by the elite. Pointed shoes became a status symbol, with the length of the toe extension indicating rank. Some were stuffed with horsehair, others had bells. One nobleman reportedly had his shoes stolen during a sermon, as they extended so far into the aisle that a child mistook them for a prize. You're now having your toes rubbed with a blend of vinegar and lavender. It burns, it tickles. You no longer feel the third toe on your left foot. Ancient Romans loved their sandals, but hated what their sandals did to their feet. They bathed daily and scraped the soles clean using bronze strigils. Oils infused with thyme and myrrh were applied afterward to mask the odour of fermented foot sweat. If you were rich, someone else did this for you. If you were poor, you did it yourself and still got judged. You are now handed a vial. The oil inside is dark and fragrant. You apply it to your feet. It immediately attracts a nearby moth. The scent is a mixture of pine resin and goat butter. You ask if this is normal. The answer is laughter and more goat butter. In India, The practice of paducah involved decorating the feet with intricate henna patterns and wearing wooden platform sandals that elevated the wearer above dust and impurity. Foot jewellery included silver toe rings, anklets with bells, and chains that linked across the arch. You're now having something painted onto your heel. It looks floral. It smells like cumin. You're told not to step on anything for at least 2 hours. In some cultures, foot baths were used to diagnose illness. If the water turned cloudy, you were deemed unbalanced. If it remained clear, your soul was still aligned. Yours has turned a strange shade of brown. An assistant adds crushed mint to counteract the symbolism. A final step remains: nail colour. Your stylist selects a small pot of dark red pigment. It's made from dried beetles and tree sap. You're told it's lucky. You're not told that it stains permanently. Each toe is painted with a shaky precision. The second toe on your right foot is declared rebellious and given a second coat. Once finished, your feet are dusted with powdered clay. This sets the pigment and absorbs any residual oil. It also makes your soles squeak when you walk. You're handed a pair of soft leather slippers with curled toes. You slide them on. They are tight. They squeak. You're assured this is a good sign. Your feet are now sacred objects, decorated, perfumed, smothered in symbolism and lightly numbed by vinegar. You try to stand and realise you have forgotten how to walk without limping. Your stylist nods. This is expected. And now that your body has been wholly transformed from scalp to soul, it's time to turn to the final frontier of ancient beautification. The internal rituals, digestive cosmetics, skin potions, face tonics, ancient beauty drinks made from moss, bone broth, crushed pearls, and suspicious powders found near volcanoes. You've adorned the surface. Now it's time to drink the glow from within. Your toes are lacquered with beetle dye. Your scalp hums with waxy defiance, and the perfume cone on your head has now melted far enough down your neck that you're fairly certain you're being basted. But now the ritual shifts direction. The attendants are no longer focused on your surface. They are preparing something for you to swallow. A small cup is placed in your hands. It is warm, slightly gritty. The liquid inside smells like old flowers and disappointment. You're told to drink it slowly. It is an ancient beauty tonic, meant to cleanse the skin, flush toxins, brighten the eyes, and possibly dissolve your will to live. You sip. It is bitter. Your tongue recoils. Your stomach sends a formal protest. In ancient China, powdered pearl was considered one of the most powerful ingestible beauty aids. Mixed into tea or water, it was said to enhance radiance, reduce wrinkles, and promote calmness. The pearl was crushed using mortar and pestle, refined through silk cloth, then combined with honey or goat's milk. Empress Wu Zetian reportedly drank it daily. You're told this brew includes powdered oyster shell instead. It's cheaper, still allegedly luminous, also slightly chalky. Ancient beauty was rarely about appearance alone. It was about harmony, balance, digestion. Your intestines were judged as harshly as your cheekbones. In Ayurveda, inner beauty was linked directly to agni, or digestive fire. Herbs like turmeric, ashwagandha and amla were consumed not for energy, but for glow. Skin was a reflection of bowel regularity. Pimples were a sign of angry colons. If your face was dull, you were prescribed laxative tea and told to be grateful. You're now handed a sphere wrapped in banana leaf. It contains a mixture of dried rose petals, date paste, charcoal and resin. It is chewed, not swallowed. The goal is to sweeten your breath, stain your lips slightly pink, and line your teeth with something vaguely antiseptic. You bite in. It sticks to your molars like moral regret. You're handed a cloth to wipe the excess from your chin. The Greeks, always innovating, drank vinegar mixed with honey and herbs to purify the blood and brighten the complexion. This was called oxymel. Some recipes included garlic, myrrh, or crushed poppy seeds. The flavour was overwhelming. The purpose was clear skin and frequent bathroom visits. In Roman circles, similar mixtures were paired with fasting, followed by goat milk and small pebbles of dried fig rolled in ashes. You're now chewing something that might be fig. It might also be soap. The ambiguity is part of the experience. In medieval Europe, beauty tonics took a sharp turn toward alchemy. Elixirs promising eternal youth were brewed from gold leaf, dried frog skin, and dew collected at dawn. Apothecaries sold small vials of liquid light, which turned out to be alcohol and lead nitrate. A popular tonic in 14th century France involved egg yolk, powdered antler, and fennel seeds steeped in wine for 3 days. You're now sipping something described as medieval clarity. It tastes like wine that briefly met a turnip and didn't get along. The Aztecs made drinkable paste from chia seeds, cactus sap, and crushed cocoa mixed with spices. These were believed to enhance stamina, moisture retention, and facial softness. You're given a small block of something sticky and brown. It smells pleasant. It feels like chewing licorice made from tree bark and hope. In ancient Persia, pomegranate juice and saffron tea were sipped daily to cool the body and prevent inflammation. Saffron was so prized that it was sometimes added to food, not for flavour but for glow. Your own tea includes saffron. You think. It could also be yellow clay and cinnamon. You drink it anyway. Your tongue now feels strangely awake. Japanese beauty traditions focused heavily on seaweed, kelp, and fermented rice water. These were consumed and applied topically. You're handed a small cup of cloudy liquid with floating threads of something stringy. You drink. It coats your throat like edible paper. You're told it will improve your skin's elasticity. You're not told when. Possibly next reincarnation. Another tonic appears, this one in a carved wooden cup. It is labelled Essence of Swan Feather. You ask what that means. You're told it's poetic. The actual contents are barley tea, boiled fennel root, and crushed mint leaves. It is shockingly tolerable. You consider asking for more. Then remember what happened with the beetle polish and decide against it. Some cultures went further. In ancient Tibet, beauty rituals included drinking decoctions made from yak bone broth, fermented barley, and crushed amulets believed to contain spiritual radiance. In West Africa, kola nut infusions were used to promote energy, mental clarity, and complexion tone. In the Arabian Peninsula, black seed oil was taken daily for hair strength and skin softness. You're now swallowing a capsule filled with something oily. It slips down too easily. You try not to think about it. Your body is now full of powders, elixirs, petal water, goat products, crushed minerals, sweeteners, ferments, poisons. Your breath smells like saffron and cloves. Your skin is flushed. Your stomach makes a noise that could summon ancient gods. You're declared internally radiant, and now that you're glowing from your small intestine outward, the beauty attendants approach with final offerings, amulets, runes, protective charms meant to preserve your new beauty. Ancient cosmetic rituals weren't finished until you sealed them. Not with hairspray, with magic. You've been painted, pierced, powdered, and pickled. It's time for enchantment. Your stomach now holds a fermented archive of every ancient culture's idea of internal radiance. You've ingested pearl dust, flower tea, powdered fish, and something labelled moon root extract that still lingers on your molars. But you're not finished. Not until the final beauty layer is sealed. Not with oils or powders, with magic. The attendants approach slowly now. There is no brush in sight, no boiling tonic, just a small satchel of linen tied with red thread and smelling faintly of iron and dried herbs. You're handed the pouch. It is warm. You're told to press it against your chest and close your eyes. You hesitate, but by now your will is soft clay, and your paws have given up arguing. The world has always blended beauty and superstition. The two are not rivals, they are lovers, jealous, erratic, and in constant communication. In ancient Babylon, women wore amulets etched with protective symbols to prevent premature aging. Some were hung from the neck, Others were woven into their hair. If your skin began to wrinkle, it wasn't blamed on time. It was blamed on curses. You're now being offered a necklace strung with small carved beads. Each bead is made from dried pomegranate rind. You're told it wards off envy. In ancient Greece, there was a strong belief that beauty attracted the evil eye. To look too good was to invite disaster. To glow too brightly was to ask for illness. So women carried blue stones, cast spells, and whispered counter-charms while applying their makeup. The phrase, "don't jinx it," may have started with someone admiring their own eyebrows in a polished bronze mirror. You're now having a line of white ash drawn behind each ear. It is made from burnt sage and crushed garlic skin. The stylist recites something under her breath. You're not told what. You're told not to rinse it for 3 days. It may smell like roasted stew, but it will keep your beauty from leaking out during sleep. The Romans had cosmetic superstitions for everything. Certain powders were to be mixed only under moonlight. Lip colour could not be applied while facing east, or it would attract liars. Some women spat over their left shoulder before putting on rouge. Others rubbed their brushes on the hem of their garment 3 times to banish betrayal. You're now tapping your left heel against the ground while holding a dried fig leaf in your palm. No one explains. You no longer ask. In Egypt, spells were carved into cosmetic containers. Boxes made of ivory or ebony bore protective prayers to ward off rot, dull skin, and envy from other women. One such box read, "May your eyes remain bright and your cheeks never sink." A beautiful sentiment. Also a thinly veiled warning against aging in public. Your stylist now opens a tiny scroll. It is made of bark. On it is charm to prevent hair from falling out during drought. You're told to recite it before combing your hair, especially during times of scarcity or after prolonged arguments. You read it aloud. It rhymes. The effect is immediate, not magical, just unsettling. In medieval Europe, beauty charms became dangerous territory. Too many herbs and too much confidence, and suddenly you were a witch. Eye of newt, suspicious. Henna stains, unnatural. A clear complexion, probably a pact with Satan. So women began hiding their rituals. Dried herbs were sewn into hems. Charm phrases were encoded in embroidery. Powders were buried in corners of the home to trap jealousy. You're now handed a clove to chew while someone mutters over your wrists. You chew. The bitterness is nearly unbearable. You're told this is normal. Among the Celts, it was common to bind your hair with red thread before festivals to prevent soul loss. Red was protection. Blue meant longing. Black meant nothing, and therefore everything. Some women kept mirrors wrapped in cloth so spirits could not enter through the glass. You're now tying a ribbon around your comb. You're warned never to leave it uncovered, lest something else decide to use it. In India, kavachas were worn for beauty and vitality. These small metallic pendants contained sacred verses and were blessed by priests. They were worn under clothing close to the heart. Some were dipped in cow's milk before being tied. Others were anointed with sandalwood and tucked into braids. You're now given a tiny cloth pouch filled with crushed cardamom and a pinch of saffron. It is tied to your waistband. You're told it will keep your radiance loyal. The stylist now reaches for a bowl of clear oil. It smells faintly of lemon and something harder to define. You ask what it is. You're told it is an eye veil. In some cultures, it was believed that lightly brushing the closed eyelids with oil while reciting a protective phrase could shield your beauty from malice. You close your eyes, the oil is cool, the phrase is whispered. The moment is both deeply silly and profoundly serious. You're now instructed to spit into a leaf and toss it into a brazier. The leaf curls and smokes. You're told this prevents any wandering spirit from stealing your glow. You don't remember consenting to being this spiritually flammable, but you nod and accept the final spritz of rosemary water as if it all makes perfect sense. In parts of Southeast Asia, lime and turmeric were pressed into clay charms shaped like flowers. These were buried beneath garden paths to bless the footsteps of the beautiful. In Japan, certain kimono patterns were thought to absorb envy. In the Andes, Powdered gold was worn in amulets to reflect harmful energy back into the mountains. In sub-Saharan Africa, beauty chants were sung while applying scented oils. In all places, beauty was never just seen, it was protected. And now, your entire body has been coated, consumed, painted, scrubbed, bound, and spiritually laminated. You're glowing. You're curse-proof. You're one sneeze away from undoing 6 hours of ritual, but for now, you have achieved it. And just when you think it's over, one more ritual is laid before you. You must now sleep, carefully, while preserving every layer, because ancient sleep routines were not restful. They were sculpted, pillows were carved, postures were ceremonial. Sleep was just another phase of the beauty cycle, and you're about to find out what it means to slumber in fear of your own cheek touching the floor. The final task is rest, but rest is a lie. There is no comfort. There is no curling up and drooling into a pillow. There is only preservation. You're a walking, blinking artifact now, and every minute you remain horizontal is a battle against time, gravity, and your own treacherous oil glands. First comes the sleeping posture. You're not allowed to lie on your side. That encourages facial asymmetry and causes cheek creasing. Ancient Chinese manuals warned against it. Instead, you are lowered onto a stiff sleeping platform with your neck placed delicately atop a curved wooden block. This, apparently, is a pillow. It resembles a torture device. It feels like it hates you. Japanese women once used similar contraptions. They were called takamakura, and their job was not to support your dreams but to protect your elaborately styled hair. To sleep on a soft pillow was to undo hours of hair work, which was considered wasteful and shameful. So geisha trained themselves to sleep still as corpses. If they shifted during the night, they were made to practice balancing their head on a block during the day, usually while holding a book on each shoulder. Your hair has been set with hardened clay paste. It smells faintly of vinegar and beeswax. You're told not to roll over unless you want to hear a sound like breaking pottery. The face, of course, is covered. An Egyptian nighttime beauty mask is smeared across your cheeks and brow. It is made of sour milk, honey, and crushed alabaster. In the dark, it feels like pudding skin. If it flakes, it means your skin is too warm. If it drips, you're unworthy of the gods. You try not to breathe too hard. In ancient Rome, women applied poultices of goose fat and crushed rose petals before bed. It was believed to soften the skin and reduce redness caused by wind and public shame. Sometimes lead-based creams were layered underneath, because nothing says luminous like slow poisoning. Roman night creams often contained vinegar, saffron, and the ashes of burnt snails. You're now having something similar dabbed under your eyes with a feather. Some routines involved wrapping the face entirely in linen strips soaked in herbal tonics. Think beauty mummy. In medieval Persia, these wraps were believed to press the oils into the skin and draw out impurities. In reality, they likely encouraged breakouts, but at least you looked mysterious. You're handed a cloth. It is damp and smells like wilted mint. You're told to wrap it around your chin and secure it with a pin made of bone. You do so with trembling grace. You're told not to speak. Ancient sources warned that too much talking before bed could stretch the mouth and form permanent laugh lines. A quiet mouth was a youthful one. You nod solemnly and pretend this isn't your personal nightmare. Your neck has now been rubbed with ox bile and powdered date pit. This was a Babylonian trick to preserve tone and reduce sagginess. There is no proof it worked, but your neck does feel like it's vibrating. Now your feet are inspected. In India, soft feet were a sign of elegance and good health, so nighttime foot balms were common. A paste of turmeric, camphor and sandalwood was applied and then wrapped in cloth. You're now slipping your feet into linen socks soaked in garlic oil. This is not for scent. It is for warding off foot demons, or maybe just rats. Under your bed, a pomegranate has been sliced and left open. In some Egyptian households, this was believed to absorb any evil that floated through the room during the night. In Greece, women place small bowls of olive oil beside the bed to reflect harmful thoughts away from their sleeping face. In Mesopotamia, Small clay statues of beauty goddesses were positioned at the headboard. If your dreams were good, they had smiled on you. If you woke up ugly, they had turned away. You're now told to hum a low note for 12 seconds while stroking the space between your eyebrows. This is not for relaxation. It is to activate your inner symmetry. If your hum warbles, you're spiritually lopsided. Your hands are tied, literally. In some cultures, women bound their wrists with silk cord to prevent fidgeting. Others wore soft gloves filled with almond oil to soak the cuticles overnight. You're wearing mittens lined with sheep tallow. Your hands feel like forgotten pastries. Ancient Persian texts recommended placing a polished copper mirror under the bed. It would reflect your sleeping soul and remind it to stay beautiful. Chinese scrolls suggested sprinkling rose petals on the mattress to charm the dreams. In Europe, it was garlic under the pillow and a pinch of salt at each corner of the bed to keep away ugliness caused by spirits, menstruation, or looking at someone too long in church. You're told to sleep with your mouth closed and your jaw slightly forward. Breathing through the nose helps sculpt the face overnight. Breathing through the mouth leads to wide nostrils, receding chins, and general unattractiveness. At least according to a 15th century beauty manuscript found in Venice. You try it. You sound like a restrained goose. Sleep is not sleep. It is an audition. If you wake up wrinkled, you failed. If your mask has slid off or dried unevenly, you will be judged. If your pillow smells like sweat instead of cedar, you will be quietly corrected. A servant now enters to adjust your toe angle. Apparently pointing inward is unlucky tonight. Your dreams are not your own. In ancient societies, dreams were interpreted as signs of future appearance. If you dreamt of birds, it meant beauty. If you dreamt of mud, it meant blemishes. If you dreamt of broken glass, it meant someone had cursed your mirror. You're given a final chant to whisper as you drift off. It is in a language you do not speak. You whisper anyway. It ends with a burp. And then the candles are snuffed. The room falls silent. Your spine rests like a plank. Your limbs are starched and bound. Your skin is sticky. Your scalp itches. And yet, you must lie still. Because to move is to wrinkle. And to wrinkle is to disappoint centuries of ghosts who died trying to look young. You're a monument now. A monument coated in goose grease and melon pulp. You have no idea how long it will last. But you're told that if you sleep well tonight, you might wake up divine. If not, you'll need another round of boiled fish paste and spiritual hair combing. And possibly a new pillow. One that doesn't feel like it's judging you. If you enjoyed this parade of historical suffering disguised as self-care, be sure to check out my other videos. There's plenty more where that came from. Trust me, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of weird. Let me know in the comments what topic you want to see next. Ancient foot fungus, medieval armpit perfumes, Victorian eyebrow glue. I'm not here to judge, I'm just here to narrate the misery.